This is a video I was excited to make ever since I started making this series, the best Monstercat songs of 2018. Around 2018 to 2019 is the time I was properly introduced to Monstercat, with Instinct in particular catching my interest. Safe to say, you're gonna see a lot of that sub-label represented here. For someone whose exposure to electronic music was mostly in the mainstream, Monstercat was able to provide me with some great tracks, to the point where I basically went, why isn't this more popular? And while that expression exploded in 2019, 2018 had that feeling across the board as well, with Uncaged providing some great dubstep and hardcore material, and Instinct providing the consistency with indie pop, future bass, and future house. And while Uncaged could dip lower at times, the best was epic. A barrage of sounds with dynamic design and bombast to make you keep listening to them. For Instinct, the emotional connection was the main appeal, with the indie pop having some personality, a sense of fun, and some genuinely great production design. Future bass took off with Doomu and Tales to the forefront, and as a result, 2018 was a very consistent year with tons of memorable tracks, and it's one of my favorite years of Monstercat. So if you want to look into this year to find some great material that got cut short of this list, and you should, here you go. An extended list of some other material that you should check out. I hope you enjoyed these tracks as much as I did. So with that said, onto the list. No remixes or VIPs, sequel songs and vocal edits can count, and only 1 to 2 songs per artist in the top 10. And with that said, let's start with our honorable mentions. While New Dawn was the Becky Peters single that everyone praised at the time, I argue this is where the iconic sound design started to pop out. The liquid touches, the analog synths, that watery thunk on the drop. It's a great song overall and establishes how timeless Becky Peters' sound was. If you want another example of why Becky Peters is so loved, this is one of the best examples why. Or is it? I'm surprised this is the first time I'm talking about or even mentioning Laszlo. He was a Monstercat regular back in the day with a number of compilations, and is one of the most beloved artists on the label. And listening to his catalog, it's not hard to see why. He has a way around some great melodies, and he always delivers whether he's making drum and bass, future bass, or electro commercial house. And Gravity is yet another great song of his. His vocals have the edge to them that I really like, and the production is classic Laszlo, with the buzzy synths having some weight. I also like how the lead evolves over time and sounds better as it evolves. This had a serious shot in the top 10, but I preferred another single of his. We'll get to it. There are very few songs that are able to combine the relaxed feeling with heavier sounds effectively, and after listening to this, along with the rest of Kill Paris' album Galaxies Within Us, I can comfortably put I Still Dream of You in that category. If anything, it reminds me a bit of Angel Voices by Virtual Self. But while that song felt really explosive, this takes more of a restrained approach, by allowing those dubstep warbles and vocal chop to flow smoothly. Two Minds was a good debut for Kill Paris, and there's a lot of good cuts from Galaxies Within Us, but this was a great track that feels different for Kill Paris' standards, and as such, it's one of the best records on that album. Great song.
Don't play fair. I'm on a midnight bike ride. There's orders 2 a.m. Left you behind. How could you think we could just be friends again? I'm on a midnight bike ride. There's orders 2 a.m. Left you behind. Now that you know things can never be the same.
You might hear me over the course of this series use the term unapologetic pop, often with the vocals as the main focus with little to no instrumental drops. So with that said, introducing Luther, an R&B producer best known for Some Kind of Magic and One Look, back to the label with This Love with Savoy, and while that song was good as well, it was his next single, Friends Again, that clicked more for me. A song about a breakup where Olivia Ridgely is wondering after her boyfriend left her at a party and she moved on, why he thinks he could be friends again. Going on a midnight bike ride with some pretty creative lyricism such as blew the red light like a candle. And the best part, it learns to have fun with it. Not only is the situation more believable than something like Anyway by Fowler, it also sounds more happy, and thus there's some self-awareness to the cheesy nature. It also helps that Luther's production is good too, with the meaty guitar licks, the indie synths, and the sandy knock. And Olivia Ridgely has a low-key vocal performance to sell the relaxed but fun nature to the track. Makes me wish that Luther stayed a little longer and Olivia Ridgely made more songs like this instead of A Million Days, but for what it was, I still really enjoy this track. Check it out. See, this is why I find it puzzling why Trivecta even gets Wooly for heavy sections, because often when Trivecta does it on his own, he's better at the Brittum stuff than Wooly is, even during a phase of Wooly that I consider decent. And as usual, Trivecta is a master at creating the atmosphere with the build-ups, those huge triangular leads, and analog synth production, building up to a drop that combines the heavy sections, the melodic sections into a drop with a lot of impact. With Trivecta's iconic leads transitioning perfectly with the bombastic synth tones and roast-up scratches on the second half. There are also several percussion switch-ups, and while they're on the weaker side of roast-up cuts, they still have the punch to make the song work. Falling with Wooly was another contender for this list because the melodic sections are great, and it's one of the few times where Wooly's Brittum sections actually work, and I much rather prefer Wooly and Trivecta as a duo than Wooly and Excision, but the heavy sections are much stronger here, and it creates a more grand, all-encompassing feeling than Falling did. As this series goes on, I'll have more to say about Trivecta, and I can't wait to get there. I think it's been a while since I've talked about Kuro at all. They were a former duo that became mainstays around 2016 to 2017. I didn't really enjoy the duo at the time, but as times went on, Kuro's music began to grow on me, especially after Jordan Post split from the duo to some rather questionable material in the 2020s. And with 1,000 cuts, it's a collaboration with a powerhouse known as Clock Vice for a gritty trap cut, with a metallic rattle riding well with the trap groove, and the second half containing some girthy synth stabs, and a Jersey Club switch up that goes way harder than I thought initially. Definitely one of the harder cuts from this year, and a must listen if you want to check out Kuro's discography. In 2025, Tasca Black recently stated they would be ending as Elias altogether. And while there's a part of me that's sad, he was slowly starting to lose what made him so interesting in the first place. But back during 2018 to 2020, Tasca Black was a great trap artist affiliated with San Hollow's label Bitbird. In fact, I would say he was the rougher, darker version of San Hollow. And We Would Never Do, despite being his only release on the label, it's emblematic of his older style that I liked. The distorted nature, the San Hollow synth on the verses that sounds rather haunted, a wall of noise bass line, and a drop with an eerie synth lead, off-key bell sounds, and metallic trap percussion. It's the heaviest Tasca Black has gotten, and the result is a haunting track with some of the best synth elements for trap. There's also Neve, whose vocal performance sounds great and contrasts nicely with the darker production. Tasca Black has a lot of good songs like In Your Eyes, Dreaming, and Be There One More Time with Duskus. I'm just glad that this single is just as good. Check it out. So I'll keep this simple. It does exactly what it's supposed to do, the tropical house production works way better than it has any right to, and the video became a massive likable meme that Monstercat would try and fail to replicate. You just can't touch the original. But now onto the list proper, starting with number 10. The most common thing I saw with 2018 best were songs that might have not have the wall of sound or imposing nature behind the tracks, but they were incredibly enjoyable songs with a lot of personality that people might overlook. That's one of the reasons why Early Instinct was so attractive to me. And here we have a song from an album that people like, but I doubt people would pick this on their own lists. But if you want the biggest example of 2018 Instinct in a nutshell, sure, it might not be the most grand feeling out of Laszlo's album, although there are certainly more contenders from Liftoff. You'll be fine with a future house cut with nice tropical design, and better with a future bass track with solid progression, but ultimately I decided to go with this, as drum and bass is something that Laszlo has mastered ever since Falling Into Light on NCS. And here, there's something about the production that works for me. Maybe it's the chill wave steppings toward the beginning that remind me of A Walk by Tycho, or the flickering, blocky snare that right up against the drum and bass percussion. But yeah, I get something out of this production, even if the mixing is a little uneven and definitely feels like an older song from the 020 compilation. It's probably why this isn't higher on the list. But my favorite part about this song is the second drop with that chiptune arpeggio. Probably one of the best sounding for a track like this, and it fits well with the rest of the drum and bass percussion. It's a great song off a great album, and it makes me wish that Laszlo will come back to the label, especially nowadays. Number 9. You might have heard me tease this pick during my best Monstercat song of 2024. I also mentioned how this artist, along with someone else, was able to get me properly introduced to Monstercat, because Slander was certainly not going to do that. But enough with the teasing, let's talk about it proper. This was the first song I listened to when I heard about WRLD, although through a coincidence, his name and stylization was identical to Juice WRLD, who made entirely separate music. Rest in peace. And the moment I heard Hang Up, it was the moment where I knew I liked this guy and wanted to hear more from him. So much of the pop material had a bright, fun atmosphere to it, and with plenty to latch onto in terms of likability, with this being no exception. Savoy's vocal performance struck the perfect balance of effectiveness and learning to have fun. WRLD's guitar licks on the intro sound amazing, along with the airy synth tones on the drops themselves, reminiscent of WRLD's warm and colorful style. And while the content is disposable, the song is more self-aware of its disposability. It's not only a pop song with a fun aesthetic, it also executes the aesthetic great. He has a few other songs from past years like A Little Too Close that for me are better. Plus, he also has Drift Away from the first Rocket League compilation that could have also made the list in 2017. But Hang Up was a great first impression that got me into WRLD in the first place, and one of the tracks that brought me into the Monstercat sphere. Check it out. Number 8. In 2017, Monstercat released their first compilation album with Rocket League, in part of their ongoing partnership. And in 2018, that relationship continued, with Volume 2 all the way to Volume 5, with plenty of new singles and some shockingly memorable and beloved tracks. From Pixel Terror's Contra, Boss Fight's Charge, Dion Timmer's Sheaways, Rootkit's OU, I honestly could keep going. The single choices were fantastic. And while there's another song from this compilation that has a higher position on this list, this was one of my favorites. And well, the artist in question isn't that surprising. I swear, this guy can never miss. If 2017 was the moment Back Up Here became one of the most beloved artists, then in 2018, that was like a continuation of that moment, and the moment when Back Up Here became one of the best mainstays around this time, with singles like Paradigm with Kara and Voyage with Savoy only adding to his fantastic catalog. But my favorite Back Up Here song of 2018 is this, and it's not even close. It was Skyle's best vocal performance yet, with a mostly restrained approach before one of her best vocal belts on the post-chorus. And it was also the song that made me realize my personal preference with Back Computer. Although songs like 40 and Just Dance are good, the explosive nature isn't something that Back Computer excels at. The one exception is Undefined, whereas here the more restrained approach is where Back Computer truly shines. And this song is one of the biggest reasons why. The muted piano keys, the distorted engulfing synth lead, the plucky leads that follow right after, and of course, the gentle liquid snap that Back Computer is known for. It's all great production here, where Back Computer's melody lines have their best moment to shine and get you basking in the atmosphere. It was proof that nobody was stopping Back Computer from being adored from the community, and to this day, it's one of Back Computer's most popular singles. And I could say it was well deserved. Number 7. You may have noticed that certain genres and moods correspond with certain labels. For example, dubstep is more affiliated with Uncaged, whereas something like Future Bass and House are affiliated with Instinct. There's also the fact that Uncaged singles sound darker and more dystopian, whereas Instinct sounds more brighter, upbeat, and carefree. That doesn't apply to all of them, of course, but it's a pattern that you notice if you look. And one of my favorite moments is when a song contrasts with the pre-established mood. For example, having a carefree, upbeat Uncaged track, like Sleepless by Pixel Terror, Chime, and Temanite, or having a darker, moodier track on Instinct, and it's a good thing we have an example of that this year. Now, if you're a Bitbird fan, you might recognize the name Tails before, who debuted on the label in 2021 with his EP Tic Tac Toe, which coincidentally enough featured Kellen, who had 2 singles in 2023 and is now making songs with Cyril. But even before that crazy parallel could happen, there was his debut single on Monstercat, Ghosted, a future-based song with tribal trap elements that created a whole new experience to Instinct at the time. Nowadays, it would probably get on Uncaged due to the darker nature of the song. It also made Tails a recognizable name, who got even bigger with his off-label single Skeletons with Inverness and Neve. The off-kilter tribal elements help aid the darker atmosphere so well, and Pauline Hare's muted vocal delivery also adds to it. I also like how the tape recorder is integrated into the beat, with the pauses placed at the right time to help with the flow. And then there's the drops, with that metallic lead being one of the most memorable leads throughout the year, along with a wooden pluck for some extra rhythm. The song blends the body and character future bass with the darker, edgier sounds the trap can come up with. Definitely must listen for Tails, and one of the best Instinct songs of the year. Number 6. Let's talk about one of the biggest and best names on Instinct, Conro. He had a few singles in 2016 through 2017, mostly consisting of future bass with very little personality. At the time, Conro was just kind of there for me, with a few bad singles like Chardonnay. Out of the singles from Connecting the Dots, the single with Desero was the only one I liked, mostly because of Desero's verse production. But in 2018, he started modifying his style into indie dance, and this paid off well for him, with All Eyes on Me being much better, and solidified Conro as someone who could provide consistently good tracks on Instinct. And while there are a few contenders such as Trippin' and Take Me There, there's no need to fight. I just want to be me. Me was the moment where I knew Conro had the potential to make some great material. Because sure, while he was a solid artist and one of the best mainstays on Instinct due to his consistency, most of his songs were good but rarely reached the category of great, at least during this time of his career. 2022 you can make a stronger case with Find You and Just Wanna Love, but Me feels like one of the few Conro songs that was legitimately great. One of the more mutual breakups for a song where a relationship started strong but the distance started growing, and at that point Conro says, hey, I don't want to fight, I know I'll be fine, I just want to be me. And the production complements the feeling of a resolution, with a blocky clap, the sharper bass line, and tropical undertones in the percussion fills. And while the first and second drops can feel a little anticlimactic, there's a good sense of flow and likable vocal chops that I can enjoy. But what makes this onto the list proper is the final drop. The big climactic moment that combines saw pads, sharper percussion, and guitar licks into a beautiful section that really sets the tone for the rest of the track, a final goodbye. Take Me There is probably other people's choice when it comes to this list, but part of the problem for me was some of the off-putting percussion elements. This on the other hand doesn't have that issue, and as such is Conro's best single of 2018. And while he would go on to top himself much later, this was the moment that cemented Conro as a great artist in my eyes. Check it out. Number 5. One of the most interesting dynamics between sublabels is crossover potential between artists. For example, when an artist who usually releases on Uncaged releases on Instinct, and vice versa. There are also multi-genre artists like Stonebank and Coven who had the ability to release on both sublabels frequently. This could lead to some interesting single choices like Dead Inside by Mazel, an Uncaged track made by an Instinct artist, or Feel Your Heart by Protostar and Sam Tabor, an Instinct track made by primarily an Uncaged artist. Then sometimes the crossover happens, brings out the best elements of said artist, and rides all the way to the best of the sublabel because of that, which is the case for AU5 and his literal journey. While AU5's Instinct run was short-lived, man did he make the most of it, with this single along with Eden with Danica Nadu being some of his best material from Instinct. And in some cases like The Journey, it surpassed some of his Uncaged work like Only in a Dream with Nitrix, a track that for the most part is restrained, relying on the reverb and acoustic elements to carry most of the track, along with Troves' gorgeous vocals. The production feels natural as well. The acoustics that consist of guitars and pianos are full of life, to the point where it just needs those elements to create a full sound. 85 is a master of atmosphere and sound, as shown time and time again, but even back then, I wasn't sure he was capable of pulling off something like this. And then there's the drops. Somehow AU5 managed to take the house tempo of 120 BPM and managed to make it sound evenly paced, with AU5's signature leads adding a lot of character and flow well with the percussion and integrated acoustic elements. Anything's off with birds chirping as the song fades out. One of my favorite songs from AU5, and it's amazing how he's able to carry the same feeling into his other material. And I have a feeling this song elevated AU5's style to even grander levels. The journey was absolutely worth it. Number 4. As I've said, Notaker started out as an artist that didn't really impress me, but digging through his catalog for this series, I found some of his best material on the label. I've already talked about Shimmer from 2017, and Infinite was a solid track as well. Some people consider that song to be most people's favorites, but for me, the track took a while to get going. As a result, it's not my personal favorite. But you know what is my personal favorite from Notaker? Never has a title been more earned with this. If Shimmer was Notaker's showcase at his melodic side and how effective it could get, The Storm is where he goes all the way with his heavier side and makes a song with some unbridled energy. This is the song that made me go, oh, that's why this guy is so loved. And while he had a rough start with Too Smooth, he absolutely cruised through this year with this, which might be the closest thing we get to a WRLD track on this label. Sounds similar to Fresh Static Snow, come to think of it. The spacey leads, the brazen synth growls, the bass heavy percussion that has huge impact, with each section evolving over time to stop the song from growing stale. Taking the best parts from Infinite and expanding them even further with the song. All of it combined with the stormy atmosphere, making you feel like you're trying your best to navigate through that storm through your spaceship, and the tension is at an all-time high. Usually I'm not big into the relaxed side of mid-tempo from Fool because of the lack of impact and how boring it could get, but despite the song being somewhat in the same lane, it brings out something that Fool's Revenge or Mercenary could never do, and it gives some much needed energy in the mid-tempo scene. This song rocks. Check this out. Number 3. To explain why this is so high, I'm gonna go back to a standard that I've been gradually gaining as the years go by. If you want to know why Eater didn't make the list last year and Creation of Disgust by Avance and Quiet missed the list in 2024, it's because I'm more forgiving towards experimental tracks. And while you could say a lot about Creation of Disgust's more unbearable moments, and Ritual by Eater's awkwardness to flow, there's some attempt to do something different. And it makes something that the Monstercat community and the mainstream haven't heard before. And while I don't like those songs, I can see why they might work for others. So flip the script. You have an experimental track by two beloved, or at the very least respected artists, making something so out of left field for the average listener. Except this time, it's a track that clicked for me so much, and the experimentation elevates this track. And with that... where do I even start with this? I guess the best place to start is with each artist. Holly is an experimental trap producer known for cuts like Till I Die with Nasty. His style is reminiscent in the second drop of that song, and has plenty of high profile collabs with Rez and Knock 2, and some well known names like Nonsense and Eliminate. He also showed up in 2017 on a Slippy song called Turmoil. Whereas Loosid doesn't have the same presence as Holly, but is well known and well respected within the community, with a trap song Clouds and an experimental Jack and House cut called Talesman, which is his most beloved track. So with two experimental artists at your disposal, you're definitely going to get something unique, and Fireflower is absolutely that. A combination of Bitbird as sound design with those leads in the pre-drops, and a sense of color that some experimental tracks are lacking. And the drops seal the deal with the experimentation. A combination of Holly's darker distorted trap design with the bass and percussion, and Loosid's bubbly leads and Drew as synth placed well in the drops. Apparently this was recategorized as freeform bass on the Monstercat wiki, so then that comes the obvious question. Where were songs like this in 2025 when we needed them? But even with that, this is a one-of-a-kind track made by two giants, where you get the feeling that only they could make something like this. Which says a lot about 2018 and how badly Monstercat messed up with 2025. Number 2. This might be a bit of an anticlimax, but this might be the first time in this series where the number 2 and number 1 positions are close to a tie. I've said before during my videos for 2025 that the emotional connection was significantly weaker than in previous years. It was one of the reasons why I didn't like 2025 as a whole, and it's the reason why this song is so high. And while it couldn't reach the top, most of you know what that song is if you know this year. At the same time, this song was the kickstart for one of my favorite Monstercat artists, and the melodic elements are some of the most memorable and emotional. So there's only one question left to ask. Where do I go from here? If you want the moment where CloudNone went from a little known producer to being one of Monstercat's best artists around this time, it's from here. His EP was okay for me, not a bad debut by any means. In fact, Spring Snow had a shot, but it was this single that won me over on him. With CloudNone's pitched down vocals sounding effective against the percussion tap, tambourine, and synthwave elements on the second drop, and one of the best melancholic piano melodies of any garage song I've ever heard. And that's all the song needs, because the atmosphere is so thick that with a few elements it creates enough space to sound full. And this is the moment where I could just leave things off, but 3 years later came the VIP, a song I initially didn't have too much expectations due to how good the original was, only to be flabbergasted by a melodic dubstep remake of the original that fleshed out CloudNone's style even more than it did. So much so that I think the VIP is actually better than the original cut. If we're looking at this song, it's an incredible garage track with some of the best atmosphere and leads on the label, but as a whole, it's a song that only gets better with age and finds new ways to surprise me. And while in the moment CloudNone is wondering where he goes from here, we already know. And it's great. Number 1. As if there was any other choice. Bust it. Yeah, I honestly don't know where to start with this, or what else I can really add to the conversation. I honestly could just play the rest of the track, or just encourage you to go listen to this on your own, or the fact that at some point this became people's favorite Monstercat song, or a song that was so adored that it not only became the most popular Uncaged song, it was able to beat out the biggest song on the label, Crab Rave, as the number 1 song off the Best of the 2018 compilation. But that's not doing this awesome song any justice. And while Riot already cemented themselves as one of the best dubstep producers for AWOL, Wake Up with Keizo, as well as Airlifting Slander's Headbanger's Ball, it's got nothing on the destructive, unbeatable force of nature that is Overkill. A metal track with tons of bite and energy. Those guitars have the muscle need to sell the impact, with the spoken word passage amplifying the tension of the song, as the Dogma Resistance are going to be attacked by Operation Overkill. The metal influences only adding to the build up with the screamo vocals, and then there's the drops, which would be like a bull in a china shop if the bull was replaced by a Mad Max vehicle and was chased down by another truck with a machine gun, with a metallic chugging creating the song with body, character, and most importantly, muscle. The industrial design pays off well in the first drop, only for it to go absolutely bonkers on the second drop with a hardcore switch up, with electric guitars on the midsection for the finishing touches to one of the biggest adrenaline boosters you will ever hear, and possibly Monstercat's hardest track to date. A track that still sounds fresh even 8 years later, and there's no doubt that anything could even challenge this. From Here came close, but while that song has an emotional connection, this has everything else. The energy, the impact, and the overall lasting impression. That's why Overkill by Riot is the best Monstercat song of 2018, as if it wasn't already said enough. The most obvious choice to a great year on the label. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw here, please like and subscribe, really appreciate it. Next up is 2019. We're gonna have to deal with Error Chord once again, but I'm still looking forward to it. But until then, I'll see you all soon.